Hi there, I'm Amy and welcome to another Animal Crossing inspired speed build in The Sims 4. Today we're building an A-frame house for Fauna, who I'll pop up on screen, and this was actually a request from Lucy Malloy 2336 from the comments, so thank you for the great idea. I actually built this before the Lovestruck expansion came out, although I don't think any of the items would have been particularly useful here. But I am building this in the world of Granite Falls, so that comes with the Outdoor Retreat game pack. I don't build here very often, to be honest, but the few builds that I have done here, they've actually all been A-frame houses. I find it really fun to do as a concept for sort of a place to vacation for your Sims, although this one is designed more for Fauna, so it's more of a house rather than a vacation home, but you could use it as either. You just have to place it in a different world though if you want to use it as a house and download it from the gallery for that, since Granite Falls is unfortunately just a vacation world. Which I really wish that they didn't have exclusive vacation worlds in The Sims 4, since you can actually just set lots to be a vacation lot, so it seems a bit restrictive to make specific worlds that you can only have one kind of lot type on. Hopefully they'll update that at some point, that would be really great, or at the very least stop adding vacation only worlds into the game. I think that would be much better. Thinking more on the actual build now, I thought it would be really nice to have this A-frame house kind of sit on top of a body of water, so I used the pond terrain tools from the base game and just added this underneath the build and then created kind of like a bridge over onto it. And as part of the decking space, I end up adding a barbecue and just a place for your Sims to hang out and sit on one of the picnic benches here, and I think it ends up looking really cute. As for the wallpapers, since I was trying to go quite rustic but also really dark in colour, again just to kind of match Fauna's aesthetic, I went for this siding from, I think it was Growing Together. It's just one of the darker wood swatches. It's a really great wallpaper. I'm happy that they added that, and it's got some fantastic swatches, so I use it fairly often. And then the stonework is from the Horse Ranch pack, and I use a couple of other items from there, including a few columns. So I think the paler brickwork really helps to lighten up the build, but still it's got that really dark moody vibe which I was kind of going for. And then for windows, I ended up just using several from base game. They had the right kind of colour swatch that matched the wallpaper. And again, this doorway, which I've added both into the back and the front of the build, that one is from, I believe it's Movie Hangout. It's just one of the darker swatches. A lot of them are super vibrant, but I think this one's really nice and neutral. So I made sure to use that here since it had some of the colours that reminded me of Fauna in it. And again, she's got the nature hobby and is one of the normal villagers from Animal Crossing, which again, I'll never get over how there's an entire category dedicated to just normal, which is probably the most boring way that they could describe that personality type. But anyway, that's what she is, and since she's into nature, I thought it would be cute to include a door with those little flowers on, so I really love the Movie Hangout door for that. And for the floor plan, since it was such a small build, it was quite simple to come up with. I did struggle a little bit with the stairs, so I cut out quite a bit of that, so you just saw the successful part of me figuring out where to put those. And I managed to use, again, the Movie Hangout door, but for the interior, so that matches the front and back doors. So I liked adding that in there. And just, I added a bit of filler furniture, which I'll go back and change later. It was mostly just to help me work out how to lay everything out. And jumping back outside to work on a bit of landscaping, I did add a lot of these purple flowers around the edge of the pond, but you might be able to tell that they're kind of floating above the pond area. I think it's just because they're from Debug. Debug seems to have a bit of an issue with foundations and just hovering above certain areas, unlike the items straight from the catalogue, which are much easier to scoot into buildings even if they have a platform. Because this was back before Lovestruck came out, I did have access to Tool, so I used that mod just to raise or lower them down into the ground a bit more so they weren't floating in the end. I didn't show all of that process though because, again, I don't know why the UI looks like this for Tool. I did look into that to see if I can download a more updated version of that or UI cheats, but they were both completely updated, and I watch a lot of other simmers who use the Tool mod and they don't have that weird UI issue. So I honestly don't know what's going on, but it works. It just looks a bit weird. So I was just putting up with it. And just adding a few rocks around the pond again, just to make it look more cohesive with the surrounding area. I was going for a very overgrown look, and I think I achieved that quite well. I do really like having ponds like this with lots of overgrown shrubs growing around the edge. I think that looks really nice. And then I added just a few lily pads in, so again it looks a bit more like nature's taken over. And then the little square items that I've put down onto the ground, these are VFX, so they are part of the base game again ever since the cottage living update. So they look a bit odd in build mode, but when you're in the live mode, they are just they'll be animated. So instead of seeing the box, you'll see either dragonflies or the fish swimming in the ground. And then I think I also added a few fireflies. So I think that helps add to the atmosphere of the build and makes it seem a lot cozier, which I enjoyed. Regarding the purple flowers as well, I have actually just realised now watching back this speed build that they don't really go with Fauna's aesthetic since she doesn't have any purple on her, but in a way I think it still works nicely given that she's very brown and orange in colour scheme, and I end up bringing a lot of orange into the interior, and I think purple goes really well with that, particularly as we're moving closer and closer to autumn. I feel like orange and purple are just really great Halloween-y autumnal colours, so I think it still looks great. And then it adds a bit more of a pop of colour rather than just having everything be orange, since this isn't meant to be an orange build, just a fauna build. Just looking at the decking space now, I did end up using the barbecue from the Jungle Adventure Pack. I kind of like how outdoorsy it felt, being in a barrel, so I used that here, and then I tried to incorporate quite a few items from the Outdoor Retreat game pack. So I grabbed the table from there, I got the bench and the fire pit from there, and then the little stool that I put by the side of the bench at the fire pit is just from Jungle Adventure. That's probably one of my favourite items in the game, to be honest. I usually gravitate towards it if I want just a small little side table or an outdoor little stool somewhere, so I do really like that one. And then round the back I just added a few planter pots outside, which when I playtest I do end up adding in the various herbs that you can get from this pack. So they are all planted and ready to go. Because again, like I said, I don't really play with this world that often, but I believe that it's kind of difficult sometimes to go and find all of the herbs and things that you need for the skill that came with this pack. Just because, especially with seasons, they're not always growing. If you needed to, you could always just drag those pots inside so they grow at all times of the year. Since they're not covered here, they will be impacted by the seasons, but I think it would be useful from a gameplay perspective to have them nearby and accessible. I was also just reading the wiki on Fauna's personality in the different games that she's been in, and it actually says that her skill is mental math, and for some reason that makes me really happy that I chose to do a triangular shaped build for her. That just makes it feel even more suitable for Fauna, so that's just a fun little extra point. But now I'm pretty much done with the landscaping, so just popping back inside, and I started with the kitchen here. I did consider using some different counters, but the ones that I ended up putting down to help with placement of furniture, which are from the Jungle Adventure Pack again, I thought the swatch worked really perfectly and they felt rustic enough, so I did include those here. One of the things that I'm not the biggest fan of with these counters is mostly the overhead cupboards, because they've got very kind of specifically coloured plates and dishes within the windows of the cupboards. I don't always like using them, but the colours worked well with what I was going with here, so that wasn't really a concern for this particular build, and I think it looks good in the end, so I'm happy about that choice. Ever since I started recording videos as well, I've been so conscious about how many items I use all the time, really trying to use something different to mix it up a little bit. And since I don't think I've published a video yet where I've built something using these counters, I figured that it would be good to keep those in, just again to make it a bit different so I'm not using the same thing each time. I did also really enjoy using the fridge and the oven from the Jungle Adventure Pack too. They come in some really great colours, but I don't often find myself picking those ones. Because I was going for an orange theme, I thought that would work really well here, and they don't seem too in your face either, which I quite like. And the little kettle that I added in suited really well, so I made sure to incorporate that. Just grabbing a few other clutter pieces for the kitchen space. I like this little hot chocolate set that comes with the Outdoor Retreat game pack. I also really love this little lamp with the fox that was added into base game when Growing Together came out. I think it was originally meant for kids' room spaces, but I end up just using it in a lot of different rooms within the house. So as you can see here, it made it into the kitchen to be another little orange accent to bring that through to the rest of the space. I also picked out this base game wallpaper, which was one of the tiles that I used the most often, this particular swatch that is. I really like this one, and before the Home Chef Hustle pack came out with the most perfect tiling for kitchens, I use this one quite often, so it was nice to use that again here. Moving on to the sort of boot room that leads into the back garden area, I incorporated this shelving unit, which is just from the Laundry Day pack. I think the colours worked quite well, again with the really orangey wood tones, so I made sure to add that in here, and then just included the umbrella stand and a little plant to add a bit of greenery into the corner. I think there is a bit of a bug with umbrellas and the Sims recently, just whenever I have my Sims outside when it's raining, and they keep using the umbrella, but then they can't do anything else. So whenever they have it open, they just seem to glitch out and they can't quite carry out any of the actions that I tell them to, which is a bit odd. Maybe that's just something to use as a decoration rather than a functional item if you have a similar issue in your game too. And under the stairwell, I ended up creating another bookshelf space, which I have done in some builds before. So I ended up using the Book Nook kit here, rather than the modular pieces from High School Years or Dream Home Decorator. Those pieces actually fit really perfectly, and I go back to clutter those a little later. I'm just working on the living room at the moment, and I made a sort of little fireplace section here just with a corner wall, and then included one of the base game sofas. I think this one is actually an unlock from one of the careers, so I just used cheats to access that. And then to make it look a little bit more interesting, included those event reward cushions, which again, at the time of recording this, I had to get those from the gallery, but thankfully since the update, they have been added into my game now since I did earn them. Thankful that that's a lot easier to access. The little stone rug that's under the fireplace as well, that's just from Get Together. There are a couple of those kinds of items. There's a rectangular one as well as the circle one. I think they're meant to be stepping stones for outdoors, but because there's only one variation, I don't find them very useful for doing stepping stones, so I usually just resort to debug, and there's the base game ones from there, if ever I'm going to do something like that. But I did think it was really useful to include as a little section under the fireplace here. I thought that was quite a fun little feature. It does mean that it's technically clipping through the wall, but because it's a little corner wall that I've basically made a void space since that triangle isn't being used, I didn't think it was a problem. And if it did bother you, you could always just raise the platform up so you can't see it clipping. And I absolutely love the coffee table from the Outdoor Retreat pack, so I added that into the living room space. It just looks really rustic again and brings in that log cabin vibe which I was going for. Looking at grabbing some curtains for the space now, I did end up using some items that again I love using. They're in almost every build. There's just these base game blinds, and then I had the sheer curtains from the Desert Luxe kit. Before heading back under the stairwell just to carry on cluttering this space, since I didn't use the full bookshelves, I did want to include a few clutter pieces, so I picked the shelving units that had spaces to be able to incorporate some of that here. Since it is a vacation lot as well, given that it's in Granite Falls, I thought it would be kind of topical to add a couple of bags down here, so I do grab one of these suitcases, again in orange to make sure that's brought through, as well as a little backpack that I thought Fauna might be using on her travels around the area. Onto the small dining space that I had tucked in at the entryway just behind the sofa, I used these university chairs and one of the base game tables, because again they felt quite rustic, but they were neutral enough that I thought they worked well here. And then I used Tool just to lower one of the mirrors. This one's from Seasons. I really like it, but it feels like it's way too high up on the wall, so I've been using it a lot more now that I've got Tool installed. And the little plant light feature that I added onto the dining table is just, again, from the outdoor retreat pack. As for the bathroom, I brought in the tile from the kitchen again and included this Parenthood shower tub combo, and the blue of the curtain matched really well with the blue in the wallpaper, so I thought they paired together nicely. I don't often use this shower tub combo either. A lot of the swatches are really bright, and I think it's odd to have like a teal coloured bathtub. So because some of the swatches have that, I don't find myself gravitating towards it. I just wish that the curtain was the brightly coloured piece and not the actual fittings. I personally don't know anyone who has like a coloured toilet or a coloured sink. They're usually just white. So it really surprised me that they decided to do that. It is a bit of fun, but I find it harder to use as a result. So that's pretty much the only swatch I ever do use if I end up picking that item, just because the bathtub is white in it, which makes a lot more sense to me. And then moving on upstairs, I'm just decorating the bedroom here, and I brought in the same curtains from downstairs and included this Seasons bed, which is one of my favourites. And I picked this brown swatch because it matched Fauna quite well in my mind, and because of the flowers on the cushions, I thought that was quite a cute addition. I also grabbed the matching side table to that coffee table from downstairs and included that just to the bedside, as well as creating a bit of a gallery wall. Originally I was going to include the Seasons mirror again here, but I moved that across to the other wall, which ends up being above a side table, which I sort of pretended was a wardrobe or a dresser. And then I created this gallery wall using the pictures from Paranormal and then just a few base game ones. This space felt a little bit awkward because it's quite a long, skinny room. So there could be space for 2 Sims, you just have to get one of them to scoot across the bed. And then opposite, I ended up just using a bureau rather than one of the dressers. So that's not technically functional, but one of the side square rooms, I do end up creating a walk-in wardrobe there. So you do still have that functionality from a gameplay perspective. And then I just added this little chair in. So there's a little reading area at the end of the bed. This build is also available on the Sims 4 gallery if you did want to download it. As always, it's just under my EA ID, which is AWayfaringFrog, so you can find any of the builds that I've put on YouTube from there. The only thing that I haven't put on is whenever I've done a short and created a room build, I don't generally upload those, especially because if I use platforms, it becomes quite difficult. But if you ever did want me to upload something that's not already there, do just let me know. But pretty much every build I do is always on the gallery, including plenty that I've done outside of YouTube. So here in that little square room, as I mentioned, I just created a bit of a dressing room and added in another one of these outdoor retreat items, which is just the mirror. I really love how rustic they all look, so it's fun to be able to use them since they're not items I generally include in builds. And then just grabbing a base game dining table to use as a desk so that I could scoot the chair to the side rather than having it in the centre. And I picked out my favourite little rustic computer, which is just this typewriter one from Cottage Living, and then incorporating a few pieces of clutter, including this little rug that I also added into the dressing room, and then just this lamp, which is from For Rent. It's become one of my new favourite lamps, so I really like that piece. And now we're coming to the end of the speed build portion of the video, so if you did enjoy it, please be sure to hit that like button, it really does help the channel, and subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss my next video. Be sure to let me know if there's any kind of build you'd like to see on the channel in the future, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks so much for watching, I hope you have a great rest of your day.